Hello, Derbyites. Well, we are almost at the Tonys. We're just days away from final ballots being due. We're days away from the Tony Awards. I'm Sam Eckmann, and I'm sitting here with David Buchanan. And these are going to be our final predictions, final, until we change them the night before. But we are going to discuss the year in plays. It's been a phenomenal year in plays. I've been working so hard this Tony season, I'm losing my voice. So I apologize for the sound of mix of Harvey Fierstein with the Crypt Keeper. That's what you got today. But let's talk about Best Play. So I think this has been pretty well determined that The Ferryman is the front runner, and Jez Butterworth is going to take this home. Do you agree with that, David?
Yeah, I don't want to discount the other plays in the category and a potential for something happening, but I think Ferryman is pretty far out front, and I feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah, I will say I still get nervous about what the Constitution means to me. That one, I was one of the few I wasn't able to see before the nominations. I saw it afterwards, and I just sat there and I was like, this is so powerful and so relevant for right now. And are they really going to not reward this? Are they going to let it go unrewarded for the night? And I'm nervous about that because there's only two places to do it, which is Best Play and Lead Actress. So it could just win Best Play without any sort of signs, because it is incredibly relevant right now. And really, it's a night of theater that I think people didn't know about going into the Broadway season. It's not typical Broadway fare. It's not even set up like a traditional play, but people are talking about this. The word of mouth has been more powerful than most shows on Broadway this season. And I think that's a really powerful thing when we talk about awards, is people getting that sense of, oh, I discovered this thing. I don't think we can rule that one out completely. I think Heidi Schreck still could take an award there.
Yeah, I agree. I have it in second place. I think it's a pretty strong second. And right around the time of the nominations, and certainly after the nominations, it is just taken off in word of mouth and box office. So I think you're right that if voters are seeing it now, especially if they saw Ferryman in the fall with the original cast, maybe they do vote for Constitution. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised. But I think the safe bet is still on Ferryman.
Yeah. And the Ferryman does have a lot of relevancy too, even though it's, this fictional story. It does deal a lot with the concept of outsiders. So that still has a lot of prescience today. But the bigger race, I think, is in Best Revival of a Play.
Yeah.
There's 5 nominees, and I don't know. I think a lot of people think it's All My Sons versus the Waverly Gallery. I personally have All My Sons. There's a lot of last-minute campaigning for the Boys in the Band, which I'm curious about. What do you have out front right now?
I'm sticking with Waverly Gallery. I'm not 100% confident. It could definitely be All My Sons, and I do think Boys in the Band is probably third or second, depending on how that shakes out. I just think there's been a lot of campaigning for Waverly that has been very smart. It's reminding voters that it happened earlier in the season, but it's not bludgeoning them with, vote for this. Some smart ads in the New York Times, some smart digital ads. And certainly Elaine May now emerging as the front runner and actress, I think helps people remember Waverly in Revival too.
And supposedly she's going to the Tonys.
I know, I've seen that.
Normally doesn't deal with stuff like that, but she's going to be there.
It's really exciting. So yeah, I have Waverly. I think at this point, I'm just going to stick it out unless last minute you persuade me to erroneously change to something else, but we'll see.
I have All My Sons right now because I remember the year where it was You Can't Take It With You versus Skylight, and people loved that production of You Can't Take It With You, and Emily Ashford was predicted to win, and even though it was closed, they said this is going to win because it's just a feel good, people love it. But Skylight won because it was the show that was still open.
Yeah.
And I think All My Sons is an American classic. It's a play that people love. It has stars in it that voters love, and it's just one of those emotionally rich shows that has just emotional fireworks popping off of it left and right. Why I'm nervous about the Boys in the Band, originally I thought, well, that can't win because it happened so long ago. It was only 84 performances, regular performances. So how did they, voters couldn't all see it? But it was the first show of the season, which means it opened May 31st. So if, these producers are smart awards people, which they are, because it's David Stone and Ryan Murphy and Scott Rudin, then they could have gotten a healthy chunk of voters in while they were seeing shows for last season, during last season's Tonys.
Yeah.
So I think it is very popular. We know Ryan Murphy's announced the film, and Mark Crowley, the author, has really been on the circuit charming people. I think it's still an uphill battle, but if there is a big shocking upset on Tony night, I think it's that The Boys in the Band wins. And here we are in Pride Month, and Mark Crowley is finally on Broadway with this classic queer play that is beloved by so many people. So I think there is a strong possibility there. I don't know. I don't know if I have the guts to predict it at this moment, but we'll see what I do when I panic the night before.
That's a pretty compelling argument, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would put it higher than second in my own predictions because I'm not bold enough to do it. But you're very convincing.
I'd probably stick with All My Sons because it's the open show, but they're putting in a lot of work for Boys in the Band.
Yeah,
and I think it has what it takes that it could be. It's going to be a very close race for this one. And if we move on to acting from there, because I don't think we can land on Revival, I have Elaine May. I think she's the default for actress in a play. Even though that is close, we're just talking about close plays can't win, but I think this is going to be an exception.
Yeah.
Again, I think the upset, even though a lot of people are predicting an upset from Annette Bening or perhaps Laura Donnelly because she's out there campaigning, The Ferryman is kind of based on her life story with her partner Jez Butterworth. I think the upset would be Heidi Schreck. A lot of people have said, but she's playing herself. She has I was crying like a baby at parts of this, and she has you laughing. You go on a whole journey with her, and it's not, I think people hear the title, maybe who haven't seen the show, and think, oh, that's like a lecture or something. And she's just being herself giving a lecture. It is a full emotional performance. And I think she would be the upset there.
Yeah, I have Elaine May out front too. I also have Heidi in second place. I don't really see that happening. I think in the last few weeks, with May getting the nomination and some of the other surprises in the category, she's really kind of solidified her position as the front runner. But yeah, I would also look out for Heidi in this category, just like we're saying, if support for the Constitution in play is that strong, it could happen here too, or maybe happen here versus Best Play. So yeah, I agree with you on where you have those two.
Yeah, I'm still going with May as my prediction because she's just, I think, has dominated all season. The lead actor category, though, I think is a huge battle because it's widely seen as Bryan Cranston from Network versus Jeff Daniels from To Kill a Mockingbird. And Cranston gives, I think, the more fiery performance. But Daniels, Mockingbird was snubbed for play, and I have heard from voters who are upset that it was snubbed for play because they wanted to vote for it. And I think that backlash could help Jeff Daniels if they say, well, why the hell didn't these nominators put this in? That was my best play. It's this huge event this season. So I think some of them could push Daniels over the edge. Right now, I'm going with Cranston by a very thin margin. How about you?
Same. I think Cranston has been helped a bit in the last few weeks. Not that we put a lot of stock into theater precursors, but he has picked up some prizes. The Drama League, which is kind of the big prize where all the actors compete. So I don't want to say that that's like really persuading me to keep him there, but it doesn't hurt that he picked up a prize. Network is closing its run the day of or the day before the Tonys. It extended, I think, 3 times to keep it in the conversation. So yeah, I think he is out front right now, but like you're saying, by a hair. And it is such a strong category that if it's not Cranston, it could be Daniels, but it might not also be Daniels. It could be somebody else in this lineup. I do have Daniels in second.
Jeremy Pope, who I have in third place, who has 2 nominations, I think is probably arguably the breakout star of this whole season.
Agreed.
Sings and dances through Choir Boy. If that was open, I think he would be probably much more in the conversation, but still.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I've landed on Cranston, and I think I'm going to leave it there, but I'm not entirely confident on that.
Well, I want to talk about some design categories since no one really does. I think Scenic Design is one place where Ink could pick something up for Bunny Christie's set. It's just there's a lot of, I think it's kind of a three-way race in Scenic for Ink, Ferryman, and Network. Do you see it that way?
I don't, because I really want to be. I mean, I do. I think if I was voting personally, I would pick Gary for Scenic Design, and I'm very tempted to put it in first place, just because I had the strongest visceral reaction to that of all the Scenic Design. And the set really, everything about the set helps that show work in a way that, not that the others don't, but it's such an integral component to the show. So if I was really bold, I would put 500 points on Gary and keep my fingers crossed. I'm not that bold, though. So yeah, I think I have either Ferryman or Ink out front at the moment, just because I'm not terribly exciting and I'm not really going to go for it. But
you make an interesting point about Gary. I think the reason why I didn't have that higher is because the standout of that set to me is all the dead bodies, which I feel like when people hear Scenic Design, they associate it with like big gargantuan set pieces, like the actual physical pieces on stage. And so I wondered if that would potentially prohibit Gary from winning. But I think Ink, Ferryman, and Network both have those really big, larger-than-life sets.
Yeah.
Ink to me is the most theatrical of them. It has like it's the most obvious concept with a set because she's created this sort of graveyard of old writers' desks that are bleeding ink out of them, and it's just the most highly theatrical to me. I still think Ferryman could win because they might just check that down the list if they're putting that for best play, but I'm personally going for Ink right now.
Okay.
In lighting design, though, I am going for Ferryman, even though most people seem to be going towards Network. What do you have there?
I have Network right now, too, but I think that's a placeholder from when I clicked them into my predictions. I could see it winning lighting design, but I'm not sold on it. Did you say you have Ferryman?
Yeah,
winning there. Yeah, I could see that happening because the lighting is very evocative in that show in a way that I don't know if people think that Network with all the technical aspects and the lighting really kind of put it out front because it's the most. But I think Ferryman uses it in a very nuanced way and memorable. So yeah, I could see Ferryman taking that.
Yeah, the lighting in all 5 of them are great, but
yeah,
I just, if I go like by myself, if I was a voter, I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of lighting design.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know, I feel like a lot of the voters maybe aren't as familiar with the finer details of some of the design categories. But I know that there are moments of lighting that stand out to me that are burned in my brain because of the lighting from the Ferryman. Like, I don't want to spoil things, but there are certain sort of mystic elements that come out that are brought about by the lighting, and there are things that you could hang on a painting. There are images from that lighting design that I remember from Ferryman. And so I think when people talk about those Tony moments, it's not only for acting awards, it's not only for a big monologue or emotional scene. I think that carries over to design elements too, and because I just remember Ferryman so much in that regard, I'm putting it there.
Yeah.
You mentioned Gary before. I have that out front for costume design. I think Ann Roth is going to get another one for Gary, which is a little bit iffy for me because there's only 3 characters, so she had less bodies to costume. What do you have there?
I have Gary too. I think what is great about the Gary costumes, even though they're not like large in number, is that they're very technical and they do a lot of work for the play. Like I was saying with the set, the costumes actually do a lot of physical work for the characters and for the show. I don't know how much of that is Roth's own, she had to make it work in the design of the costumes. But yeah, I think I do have Gary out front. I don't know what I have. I'm not entirely confident about it. That's why I'm kind of
interesting this year
because
I think you're right about Gary. It's like she transforms the actors into these like little crusty creatures. It's really fun to watch. But it's interesting because we see like classic period pieces win so often in this category. And the only one that really fits, I mean, Gary is essentially, but it's so kind of highly comical. It's a little bit different. The only one that fits the traditional bill for that is Bernhard Hamlet,
Yeah.
which is closed. I'm not sure if it won the Drama Desk, but it was the only Broadway nominee at the Drama Desk category. So I'm not sure it's going to take home the award there, which kind of leaves it open to a lot of different types of styles of costuming that don't normally win this category.
Yeah, I don't have Bernhard Hamlet in my top few choices, but I might need to rethink that. I think Gary's pretty strong, but maybe just, as you're saying, kind of as a lack of a really strong or obvious frontrunner in the category, that's where I've landed.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have the Ferryman because there's so many bodies. Like, obviously, most costuming is what people think of. And so there's the largest cast in that one, but I'm going with Gary. I will go with Ferryman for sound design. However, I know Network is very high concept with the sound design and maybe does have the most sound design, but I guess same as lighting design, I just remember those banshee wails and the way that it sort of like subtly is coming in under the dialogue to a point where you don't even know it's there. And I think the sound design in that is again, it has moments that I remember specifically. What do you have?
Yeah, I think I have Ferryman too. I think kind of the distinction, like we were talking about in lighting design, is Network certainly has the more overt and visceral design aspects. I don't know if that really lends itself to being the front runner because it's just there, or if you're looking for something that's more memorable and maybe more slight. But like you're saying, there are some standout moments in Ferryman where the sound and the lighting design are really quite prominent and memorable in that way. So
I was wondering, do you think there is any possibility that Choir Boy could take this? They loved that show, at least the nominators did. And it's a show with music. We've seen history in the sound design of a play category. If the play has music, it has a great shot at winning, like Lady Day Emerson's Bar and Grill, Peter and the Starcatcher won. I think if it was still open, it could win. And there's an interesting thing this year where there's a new online portal for Tony voters where they have to log the day they saw the show, which they're trying to get around people voting in categories they're not, they haven't seen all the nominees in because sometimes they don't come or they'll give away their tickets. It doesn't completely solve that issue because it's still kind of based on an honor system. You know, they don't know if they gave away their tickets, but they are at least logging in the date they saw the show, supposedly. So I do wonder, I'll be interested to see if some of these closed shows, like if Choir Boy could pick up sound design, or some other closed show could take something because of that new portal. Because if it was open, I think Choir Boy would win this.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And obviously the nominating group is much smaller than the general body of Tony voters, but Choir Boy did really well in a number of categories in terms of nominations. So it's not as if, even though it's closed, it only got in for actor and play. And I actually could, now that you're kind of talking us through it, I actually could see a path for it winning in that category. I think that might be the strongest chance it has to pick up a Tony. So yeah, that's a really compelling argument too.
Well, the next thing I was going to talk about was director, but I just think that's Sam Mendes, and I don't know if anyone is going to beat him for that. Do you?
No, I agree. I think I have Bart Shear in second for Mockingbird, but I think Sam and Ferryman are out front for that. Yeah,
I mean, if that Mockingbird backlash is real, I think Best Director is a place where it could gain some traction, but the Ferryman is such an enormous production in every, I mean, the cast is enormous, the set is enormous, the show is 3.5 hours long, and he has so many moving parts that he has to...
Live animals and a live babies.
Yeah, it's immense, and it's a very fine job weaving those threads until it all explodes at the end. So
absolutely.
I think he's got it. Yeah. For featured actress in a play, I feel like Celia Keenan-Bolger, I was nervous because I've said this last year, or not last year, when she was last nominated for Glass Menagerie, I thought it was going to be her year. So I'm nervous to sort of proclaim her again, but I'm going to do it, and I think it's Celia Keenan-Bolger's year for To Kill a Mockingbird. Do you?
I do too. I have her winning. I'm also trepidatious just because I really thought she was going to win for Glass Menagerie as well. I thought that was pretty wrapped up. I do have Fionnuala and Julie White also kind of in the conversation. If Ferryman is going to pick up an acting trophy, I think this is where it would most likely do it. And Julie White, I just think personally, if I was voting, I don't know if I would choose her, but it's one of the most memorable performances of the season for me. So I think there could be a contingent of people that just remember that and check it off. It's such a comedic role. It's such a memorable role. And we've seen things like that win in this category where it doesn't have to be the most substance, but the most memorable.
Yeah, you know. She's hysterical in that. I mean, that part is, she just comes out screaming and doesn't stop. But I think the problem I have with that is that they put Christine Nielsen in featured. I don't think she belongs there. I think she's lead along with Nathan Lane.
Same.
And they're both very beloved Broadway veterans.
Yeah.
And I think there are people who remember Christine's role in Vanya, Sonia, Masha, and Spike, whatever the order of those names are.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
And, you know, I don't know if there could be a split between those, because Gary, I think, is already going to be too weird for some people.
Totally.
And for many people, actually. Taylor Mack is not everyone's cup of tea, especially for an older voting audience. But I don't know. I think, and they've been making a lot of appearances together. They've done a lot of interviews together. They've been hosting things together. They hosted the drama leagues, right? And so I don't know that they've kind of solidified and said, like, vote for Julie White.
Right.
Even though she has the featured role that could win this. I think if she was by herself in the category, she could steal it. But other than that, I think Celia is going to win. Fionnuala Flanagan certainly has a part that would traditionally win, but I just feel like the community has sort of rallied around Celia this year.
Yeah.
And for featured actor, I really don't know what's happening here. I think I really don't know. People have Bertie Carvel. I think just because he has the Olivier, it's a great performance. It's a highly physical performance. He transforms. It's kind of a villain that people love to vote for. My hesitation with voting for him is that I'm not sure people are like over the moon in love with Ink. I don't know how much passion there is for that.
Yeah.
And the role, while it's great, it doesn't have that. There's not as many moments compared to his other nominees that kind of bring you in emotionally. Whereas someone like Brandon Aronowitz in Burn This has these moments where you just feel for that character and you empathize with that character and you are drawn in and want to love him. And like Benjamin Walker, finally a nominee after, you know, many close calls, has this part that's just the thing we think of when you think of a winning role is that role in All My Sons. He just has so many moments to explode. So I'm going with Walker right now, and I'll probably switch another 10 times before I finalize.
I have Birdie right now. I think the points you're making about the performance are really right. There is not necessarily even just one standout scene where you would say, you know, that's the scene that's going to win him the Tony for Ink. I do think what I like about kind of putting him in first or second and kind of toggling him around is it is a very prominent featured role. He opens and closes the show. He does recede into the background for stretches, which you would expect from a featured performance, but it is one of the performances that you leave that show really thinking about. The same could be said for a number of people here.
For all of them, though, really.
Yeah. So if I'm going to switch to somebody else, it's definitely going to be Walker. And I think that may be a bit contingent on what I do in the revival category. I know I should see them kind of as distinct, but if I change my mind and put All My Sons into first for revival, I think I might also move him up in first place too. Because I don't think Annette Bening is going to win actress. And if they do want to award the best revival a trophy, I think he could take it. He could take it whether it wins that category or not. But I'm trying to put some rational system in place to pick somebody for this category because I just don't know.
It's the hardest one of the night, I think.
Agreed.
Well, for everyone watching at home, now's the time to go log on to Gold Derby, make your own predictions, tell us how right or wrong you think we are, and we will find out when the Tony Awards happen. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for Gold Derby.